Hi everyone, and welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Oliver. Today we're talking about something that can totally transform the way you speak English, how to explain things clearly and simply.
Yes, and this is such an important skill, whether you're at work, helping someone learn something, or just trying to be better understood in a conversation.
Exactly. One of the biggest mistakes learners make is thinking that speaking fluently means using big, fancy words all the time.
But in reality, clarity comes from simplicity. If your listener gets confused halfway through, you've lost them. That's why clear, short sentences are your best friend.
Let's break it down a bit. Suppose you're explaining a new app to a friend who's not tech-savvy. Instead of saying, "It synchronizes your multi-platform digital calendar through an AI-enhanced backend," you could just say,
"It helps you see all your calendars in one place." That's way easier to understand, right?
Definitely. And here's another tip: use signposting. Say things like, "First, let me explain," or, "For example," or, "In short," to guide the listener.
It's also good to give examples whenever you can. Abstract ideas become real when you connect them to everyday situations.
So true. Let's try one together. Charlotte, how would you explain inflation to someone learning English?
I'd say something like, inflation means that prices go up. Over time, things like food or clothes cost more money. So, the money you have buys less. Simple and direct.
Perfect example. No jargon, just clear explanation. Another way to improve clarity is by checking if your listener is following along. You can say, "Does that make sense?" or "Would you like an example?"
Yes. That also makes the conversation feel more interactive and respectful. You're not just talking, you're connecting.
And that's really what it's all about: clear communication, not showing off your vocabulary.
Exactly. Fluency isn't just about knowing a lot of words. It's about knowing how to use them in a way people understand easily.
Another strategy that helps is breaking things down into steps. Like if you're explaining how to make a cup of tea, you wouldn't just say, "Make tea." You'd guide the person: first, boil water. Then, put a tea bag in a cup. Pour the hot water in. Let it steep. Then take the bag out and add milk or sugar if you like.
Right? Step by step makes anything less overwhelming, especially when you're trying to teach or explain something to someone who might not be familiar with the topic or the language.
And slowing down your speech a little can also help. You don't need to speak like a robot, but give people time to follow your ideas. Rushing just makes you harder to understand.
Definitely. And your tone matters too. Speak like you're having a friendly chat, not giving a complicated lecture. A relaxed tone helps the listener stay calm and open to learning.
That's a great point. Also, don't underestimate the power of body language and facial expressions if you're talking in person or on video. A smile and eye contact go a long way when you're explaining something.
Absolutely. And even in just audio, like this podcast, your energy and tone can make the difference between sounding confusing and sounding confident.
Now here's another cool idea: try paraphrasing. After explaining something once, say it again in a different way. That gives the listener another chance to catch your meaning.
Like, say you're explaining budgeting. You could say, "Budgeting means planning how you spend your money." Then add, "You write down how much you earn and how much you want to spend each month." See? You're reinforcing the idea.
That's so useful. And listeners, don't be afraid to repeat yourself. Repetition helps ideas stick. Just don't repeat the exact same words over and over, change it up slightly, like Charlotte did.
Exactly. Repetition with variety. And here's another tip. Avoid too many idioms or cultural references, especially if your audience includes English learners. They might not know what "it's a piece of cake" or the ball is in your court means.
Yes. Stick with literal language, or explain the idiom after you say it. You can say, it's a piece of cake, meaning it's really easy.
And if you're not sure whether someone understands you, just ask. Like we said earlier, is that clear, or do you want me to say that another way? Being open like that builds trust and makes communication smoother.
And if someone does ask you to repeat or explain again, don't get frustrated. That's normal, and it means they're engaged and really trying to understand.
Exactly. It's a sign of interest, not a lack of intelligence. And honestly, good communicators are the ones who are patient and adaptable. The more you explain things, the better you get at reading what works and what doesn't.
And here's something a lot of people overlook, using examples from everyday life. If you're explaining something technical, connect it to something familiar. For example, if you're explaining data storage, compare it to organizing clothes in different drawers.
Yes. Analogies are magic. They take something abstract and make it feel real. People remember stories and comparisons way more than dry facts or textbook definitions.
And one last tip, don't worry about sounding perfect. You don't need fancy vocabulary or a flawless accent. Just aim to be understood. Clarity over complexity, always.
Couldn't agree more. It's not about sounding like a professor. It's about making your message easy and pleasant to listen to.
So whether you're helping someone at work, giving instructions, or just sharing your thoughts with a friend, clear communication is such a valuable skill to build.
And like anything else, it gets easier the more you practice. Explain things, listen to feedback, adjust, and keep going. You're learning every time.
Another great strategy is to check for understanding as you go. Don't just speak for 5 minutes straight, pause and ask things like, does that make sense, or should I go over that part again? It shows you care about the listener and it gives them space to interact.
Yes, and it helps you adjust in real time. If you notice they are confused, you can rephrase or slow down. And if they nod and follow along, you know you're on the right track.
Also, using body language, even in a virtual conversation, can make your explanation easier to follow. Use your hands naturally, not when they understand, show expression with your face. It supports what you're saying.
Totally. Even tone and rhythm play a role. If you speak in a flat, fast tone, people tune out. But if you vary your pace, add pauses, and emphasize key words, your listener stays engaged.
And don't forget about structure. Begin with a brief outline, say what you're going to explain. Then go step by step, and wrap it up with a summary. That beginning, middle, end flow helps people stay with you.
Right. For example, if you're explaining how to book a flight online, start with the general idea, like going to a flight website. Then walk them through the steps, search, choose dates, pick a seat, and end by confirming the ticket.
Clear, logical, and simple. It makes a world of difference. Plus, if you're speaking to non-native English speakers, using everyday words instead of complex vocabulary will help your message land better.
And if you ever get stuck mid-explanation, that's okay. Just say something like, let me rephrase that, or let me try that again in a simpler way. It shows confidence and honesty, not weakness.
Exactly. That little shift, being okay with pausing or correcting yourself, can actually make you sound more professional and trustworthy. Nobody expects perfection, they expect clarity and a genuine effort to communicate.
Another tip is to use comparisons or metaphors. If someone doesn't understand something technical, comparing it to something simple they already know can really help. Like saying, think of your internet router like a water tap. If too many people are using it, the flow gets weaker.
That's such a good example. Metaphors stick. People remember them, and they're easier to grasp than abstract explanations. It's like translating complexity into a familiar language.
Also, be aware of the listener's knowledge level. If you're talking to someone who's new to a topic, avoid jargon. But if it's someone experienced, you can go a bit deeper. Just always explain new terms the first time you say them.
And on top of all that, practice makes it smoother. If you know you'll need to explain something, maybe at work or in a study group, rehearse it out loud first. Try recording yourself or explaining it to a friend who can give feedback.
That's a game changer. Just practicing out loud even once makes your explanation more natural and less stressful later. You catch awkward phrasing or confusing parts in advance.
And one more small but powerful trick: after you finish explaining something, you can ask the listener to repeat it back or explain it in their own words. That confirms they got it, and you can correct any misunderstandings gently.
Yes. It turns a monologue into a dialogue. And that's the real goal, right? Communication that goes both ways, clear, simple, and human.
Right, and it's actually empowering for the other person too. When you invite them into the conversation like that, it shows that you care whether they really understood, not just whether you explained it.
Exactly. It builds trust. People feel seen, not talked at. And it also helps you grow as a communicator. You start to notice which parts of your explanation people usually struggle with, so you can improve it next time.
And let's not forget tone and body language. Even in English, how you say something matters just as much as the words themselves. If you sound too fast or too flat, people might tune out, even if your words are perfect.
Totally. A calm, warm tone helps people follow along. And using your hands to gesture, or even sketching out ideas on paper, can make abstract ideas more concrete. Visual aids go a long way, especially if English isn't your listener's first language.
Yeah, visuals are underrated. And repetition helps too. Don't be afraid to restate the key point in a different way. You're not being redundant, you're being helpful.
That's so true. Think of it like wrapping the same gift in different paper, until they can unwrap it in a way that makes sense to them. That's clarity.
Nice metaphor there, Charlotte.
Why, thank you. See. Practicing what we preach.
Ha ha, right. And you know, sometimes people hesitate to explain things simply because they think it might make them sound less intelligent.
Yes. That's such a common misconception. But the truth is, being able to explain something clearly and simply actually shows more intelligence, not less. It means you understand it well enough to break it down.
Exactly. Like Einstein supposedly said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. There's real power in simplicity.
And let's not forget that clarity also helps you avoid misunderstandings, especially in professional settings. Miscommunication can lead to mistakes, confusion, or even conflict.
Definitely. That's why it's helpful to use examples whenever you can. Let's say you're explaining a technical process, don't just go through the steps. Try to relate it to something familiar.
Yes. Like comparing data backup to making a photocopy of important documents, or likening a computer's RAM to a person's short-term memory. Analogies are your best friend when explaining things.
Couldn't agree more. And when you're not sure if someone is following, just ask. Something like, does that make sense so far? Or, would you like another example?
That's so effective, and friendly too. It makes the other person feel comfortable asking questions, which makes the whole conversation more collaborative.
Exactly. Communication isn't a one-way street. It's a two-way interaction. And the more we approach it that way, the more confident and clear we become in English.
And you know what else helps? Pacing. When you speak too fast, especially while explaining something, it can overwhelm the listener. Slowing down just a bit gives them time to process each idea.
Right, and it gives you time to think too. A lot of people rush through explanations because they are nervous or afraid of pausing. But pauses are powerful. They create space.
They really do. And intonation matters as well. If your tone stays flat, people might lose interest, even if what you're saying is important. But when you emphasize key words, it keeps things engaging.
Absolutely. Tone, pauses, speed, all of that affects how your message is received. It's not just what you say, but how you say it.
Also, don't underestimate the value of visual aids when explaining something complex. Even if it's just drawing something out on a piece of paper, or using hand gestures, those little things make your message clearer.
Definitely. Especially when you're speaking to someone whose first language might not be English. Visuals can bridge the gap. And sometimes, people just learn better when they see things.
Yes, and when you finish explaining, a good trick is to summarize the main points. Just a quick recap, like, so the main idea is X, and you just need to remember Y and Z. That really helps it stick.
Exactly. It shows you're organized in your thinking, and it gives your listener a clear takeaway.
Another thing, check in with the person you're talking to. After you explain something, you can ask, does that make sense? Or would you like me to go over it again in a different way? That shows you care about clarity, and makes it feel more like a conversation, not a lecture.
That's a great tip. It also gives them permission to ask questions without feeling awkward. Like you're creating a safe space to be confused, which is really helpful especially in workplace communication or teaching situations.
And don't forget about body language. Eye contact, open gestures, and even a friendly smile can make your explanation more effective. It builds connection and shows confidence.
Yes, and confidence doesn't mean knowing everything, it means staying calm and clear even when you're figuring things out as you go. You can say, let me think about how to explain that better, and that's totally okay.
Totally. It's better to pause and be thoughtful than to rush and be confusing. Another thing that helps is giving relatable examples. Like if you're explaining a new concept, compare it to something familiar.
Yeah, analogies are magic. You might say, it's kind of like when you, and instantly, people get it. It creates that little spark of understanding.
Exactly. And if you're ever unsure whether your explanation landed, just ask for feedback. Something simple like, did that help? Or is that clearer now? Can open the door for improvement and conversation.
Right, and when you ask for feedback, be open to it. If someone tells you they didn't quite understand, instead of getting defensive, just rephrase and try again. It's a learning process for both sides.
Absolutely. And speaking of rephrasing, it's always good to simplify your words when needed. If you're using technical terms or complicated vocabulary, think about whether your audience is familiar with those terms. You might need to break them down or substitute with simpler words.
Yes. I've found that avoiding jargon, especially with people who are new to a topic, can make a big difference. And it doesn't make you sound less intelligent, just more considerate.
That's so true. Also, repetition can be really helpful in reinforcing key points. You don't want to repeat everything, but if there's something crucial, repeating it in different ways can really drive it home.
Exactly, repetition doesn't mean you're boring, it just means you're ensuring your message sticks. Plus, it gives people time to process the information.
And don't forget about pacing. Speaking too fast can leave people scrambling to keep up, but speaking too slowly might make them lose interest. It's all about finding that sweet spot where you're clear, but also engaging.
Right, pacing is key. And if you're really unsure whether you're explaining something well, watch people's reactions. Are they leaning in, nodding? Or are they checking their phones? That can tell you a lot about how well your message is landing.
That's a great point, Oliver. It's all about connecting with your audience. If they're engaged, you know you're doing something right. But if you're losing them, it's okay to pause and ask if they have any questions.
For sure. And remember, explaining things clearly is a skill that improves over time. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to break down complex ideas into bite-sized, understandable pieces.
Exactly. So, keep practicing, keep being patient with yourself, and always be open to learning how to explain things even better.
And when you're explaining, try to use examples or analogies that your audience can relate to. Sometimes, comparing something unfamiliar to something familiar can make a huge difference in understanding.
Yes. That's actually a great technique. For example, if you're explaining a complex technical concept, you could compare it to something everyday like a car engine or a recipe. It makes abstract ideas more tangible.
I've noticed that when you tell a story to explain a point, people are more likely to remember it. Stories stick with us in a way that raw facts or data just don't. You could even use personal experiences or current events to make your explanations more relatable.
Exactly. And as you're telling your story, or providing an example, remember to keep your tone varied. A monotonous delivery can make even the most interesting concept seem dull. By emphasizing certain words or changing your pitch, you're keeping your listeners' attention.
Totally agree. And if you're talking to someone from a different culture or background, always be mindful of potential language barriers or differences in understanding. It's important to adjust your language or tone so everyone feels included and can follow along.
That's an important point. Being culturally sensitive while explaining something shows respect and can go a long way in ensuring your message is received well. And if you're not sure, you can always ask if they need further clarification, or if you should explain in a different way.
Definitely. And a big part of this is also staying patient with yourself. We're all constantly learning how to communicate better, and sometimes you might get caught up in explaining something and realize it didn't come out right. That's okay. It's part of the process.
Exactly, Oliver. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to keep improving. And the more you practice breaking down complex ideas in a simple way, the better you'll get at it.
Yes, and remember that the goal is always to connect with the other person and ensure they are able to understand. As long as you're patient, flexible, and thoughtful in your approach, you'll get your message across effectively.
Exactly. It's all about keeping it simple, clear, and making sure you're engaging your listener. Keep practicing, keep improving, and you'll find your flow.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's conversation on how to explain things clearly and simply in English. I hope you've picked up some useful tips that will help you communicate more effectively in your everyday conversations.
Absolutely. Remember, the more you practice, the more confident you'll become. Keep it simple, be patient with yourself, and always try to connect with your listener. You've got this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the British Accent Podcast. We'll be back with more tips and tricks to help you improve your English. Until next time, keep practicing, and don't forget to enjoy the process.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.